Welcome, everybody. You just tuned in to The Father Show, and I'm your host, Mike Thompson. I'm so glad that you joined us today. We have a great show for you today, and I think it's an unusual show. And we're going to be talking about how you can learn to meditate and do some self healing. So today we have Reverend Joanne Angel BarryColon, and she has 30 plus years in the health, fitness, and wellness industry. Now, she is the owner of Holistic Fitness, a certified personal trainer, and she's a intuitive healer, a cosmetic energy reader, and I can't wait to find out what that really is, and host of Joanne Healing Within TV show and Joanne's Cosmetic Energy radio show. And she is the author of Healing with Meditation. And Reverend Joanne has helped educate and heal over 20,000 people, transforming their mind, body, and spirit with movement, nutrition, and meditation. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want you to welcome my friend and our guest today, Reverend Joanne Angel BarryColon. Joanne, Reverend Joanne, how you doing?
How are you? And thank you so much for having me today. And I just want to make a small correction on my name. It's
Okay.
actually Reverend Joanne Angel BarryColon.
Oh, Angel BarryColon. Okay,
Yes,
my mistake.
BarryColon as opposed to colon. Yes, everyone gets that confused, but that's okay. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and really excited to be able to have this conversation with your audience, which is all men.
Yeah.
And it really thrills me, to know that there is actually a show out there that's dedicating to men. And why I say that is because majority of the people, or should I say the majority of the sex that really focus on healing and meditation, and I
Mm-hmm.
hate to say it this way, are primarily women.
Right.
And one of the things many women tend to say, is they want a man that is already healed and they don't have to work on helping them heal, or they don't want to fix them, so to speak. Now let's get an understanding here. No one's broken to need to be fixed.
Right.
That's like my understanding. No one's broken, so no one needs to actually be fixed. And when I ran into your show on Facebook, I was like, wow. I says, this is really perfect, because I was just literally in my own meditation asking, how can I serve men with a much higher calling?
Mm-hmm.
And there was your show popped up on my screen. I'm like, oh, look at this. I truly believe that when you ask, our higher power delivers. And
Absolutely.
it delivered, because I had the opportunity to connect with you. And when I initially had written to you, I gave you this whole shamir about, what I do for women. And then you brought it to my attention that your audience were men. And I knew that, but now based on, I guess, my general writing, it's always like I focus on the women. And it's like, that's right, his audience is men. It's not women.
Mm-hmm.
Which again is fascinating, because again, to know, and just out of curiosity, not to put you on the spot, but
No.
generally speaking, from one week to the next when you have your shows, how many men actually watch your show?
It varies. I'm not sure how many men, but and we also have women. So it's not just men. We have women that watch the
Yes.
show as well, and that has always been the case with the organization. That when we tell people what we do, the women are like, oh great, oh I know somebody that can really use you, and you tell the men, they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. So but
Exactly.
we do know they tune in, we do, because we hear from them, but they don't really like to admit that they are watching the show, or that they even have a problem that they want to
Yes,
watch the show to solve.
exactly. Well, I like to look at it as, rather than focusing on them having a problem, because we don't have problems. None of us have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have journeys that we've come into this lifetime to step into a different path with it, and to learn lessons from the experiences that we do have, what we
Mm-hmm.
might call as a problem. but it's really
That's
just our
true.
lesson.
That is true.
So when we can take that mindset of saying, okay, well, that man has a problem. No, that man has a lesson that
Mm-hmm.
theoretically, like I like to say to women, you attracted this man into your life. So now the better question is, why did you attract this man into your life? What lesson is it that this man's going to teach you about yourself, and you're going to then help him learn about himself? So I do think
Absolutely.
it's like literally a puzzle coming together,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it
it's
also takes away some. Go ahead.
no. I was just gonna say, you're right because I've even talked to people about why they attract a certain person and why they keep attracting certain people into their lives. So I think you're
Mm-hmm.
hitting it on the head.
Yes, and I'm going to actually answer that question that you just asked: is why are we attracting certain people? Why do we keep attracting the certain people? And that's a
Mm-hmm.
really good question. And the answer to that question is, it's called the word pattern. We have certain patterns that we have, and in the process of when we are not working on ourselves to raise our vibrations, shift our energy, we have patterns that we have done over and over and over again in lifetime and this lifetime that keep showing up. And those patterns will keep showing up until you actually learn the lesson behind the pattern. And then once you learn the lesson behind the pattern, I like to call the lesson is the karmic energy behind the pattern. We then can shift from it because we've learned it now. It's like being in school. It's like you take go to social studies class
Mm-hmm.
and you take your exams and you don't pass the exams. You have to retake that class all over again. It's the same thing in reference to our life experiences. If we connect with someone whom has a different face from the last person we connected with, but the same lesson, it's letting us know that it's a pattern we have and we haven't learned the lesson. Now, that doesn't mean once we learn the lesson that we're not going to stay with that same person. It just means now with that person, we see them in a different light. They see you in a different light. And now you'll have new lessons to work with. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really about working on healing oneself, working on healing each other in the partnership. And it doesn't matter what kind of partnership it is. It could be a relationship, intimate relationship, a business partnership, a family partnership, a sibling partnership, any type of concept that's related to partnership. It's patterns that we have, and we do attract and call in people into our path
Mm-hmm.
based on these patterns that we have to learn.
Yeah, and that's something that can work that or happens for men and women. So it's not a uh, or either or this is something that both men and women experience.
Exactly. Yes, it's definitely not gender specific. In reference that a man has certain patterns, women have certain patterns, and when you come together, when you're attracting these different people into your path, these people come into your path. One of my favorite expressions is people come into your path for reason, season, or lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And they come in to teach you something. And sometimes people will come in to teach you where they're your mentor. Sometimes people will come to teach you things that you don't want to do. So they're going to teach you I'm going to use the word ugly things. It's like, oh, I don't want that. I don't want that. They come in to show you the things that you don't want. And that's what they're there for.
Mm.
And then you'll have people who will come in to shine your light so you can see all the greatness about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody comes in for different reasons. And some people can come in for multiple reasons. So, just because someone like, for example, your partner, your spouse, they'll
Mm-hmm.
play many roles in your path and many of lessons and many of patterns that you'll have and had when you first met them. Like when you get a couple that's married 30, 40 years, how they were when they first met, and then how they are 40 years down the road, they are not the same person they were when they first met.
Right.
They've gone through layers of pattern changes, habit changings, and shifting to become the person they both are at that time 40 years later.
Right.
But the concept is they work together to do that. It's not an individual. It's not I'm not gonna say it's not an individual job, because it actually is. Because me working on myself is going to improve me, but then it's also going to help me see my partner in a different light. The same way
Mm-hmm.
when my partner working on himself is going to see himself in a different light, then he sees me in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an individual effort, but then it's a joint effort where both parties are working together to recognize the whole pattern, the whole habit, and both parties do have to be on board to do this. Because if both parties are not on board to do this, the one who is actually doing the work is going to get very frustrated because the other person's not.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, the one that is doing the work has to be patient and understand that eventually their partner will go into that space of doing the work. It may take them a little longer to get there, or may take her a little longer to get there.
Okay. And that makes sense even when you're looking at, your longevity of your marriage and how, I could tell people if you marry somebody that say when you're at 21, by the time they're 30, they're going to be a different person. And once again, by the
Oh yeah,
time they're 40, they're going to be a different person. They're not going to be the
oh
same
yeah.
person that you marry. Right?
And we hope not. We really hope not. I mean, if, like for example, my husband and I mean, we met when we were 16. We didn't marry right away. We actually only married 7 years ago.
Oh,
But in
wow.
that period of time, I mean, if I was the same person, what's that?
I said, oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. There's a whole story behind that. But if I was the same person I was when I was 16 at the age of 50, that would be a problem. And vice
Yeah.
versa. If he was the same person he was at 17 and now being 51, that would be an interesting, but like, what?
Yeah. That would make a difference. I agree. I mean,
Yes, it would.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't, my wife, we've just been married it's 9 years. And she said, oh, I wish we had met earlier. And I'm like, no, that wasn't, that's not something we should have done. I
Uh-huh,
mean,
uh-huh.
and I tell her mentally, I wasn't ready and she probably wasn't ready. So we believe the universe, God, whoever you want to say, brought us together at the right time that made it just
Exactly.
perfect. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Timing, I believe timing is everything. And
Mm-hmm.
when we think about timing in reference to the universal world, there is really no timing. Timing
True.
doesn't exist universally speaking. It
Mm-hmm.
exists for humans because we need to know, oh, what time it is. But timing does play a huge role because, as you said, if you would have met your wife maybe when you were in your teens, she might have not have liked you so much, or vice versa for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
Yes. So yes. So yeah, I definitely think, working through patterns and really getting to that space of understanding that we do all have patterns, we all have habits, and we all have beliefs that we grow up into. And we need to come to a space where we have to ask ourselves, well, does this belief work for us anymore? Does this habit really work? Does this pattern work?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we draw into like what meditation is. And like one of my favorite practices of meditation is chakra balance, energy healing. And
Okay.
when we think about that in reference to chakra balance, um, energy healing, it's really about aligning oneself with their chakras so they can connect to the internal energy that each and every one of us have, internally speaking. And like, for example, just to share, when we think about the 7 chakras, for those who are new to chakras and meditation out there are 7 primary chakras that we work with when we meditate. There are actually more than 7, but 7 primary ones that we work with. And when we think about survival, and being that this is a male audience, we're going to go right into that survival in reference to the role of what a man's role typically is based on belief and habits, for that matter, is being the protector, the provider. And if their root chakra, which is located down on their spine by their tailbone, if their root chakra is not aligned, where they were not nourished as a child or a teenager, that they are great, or they have strengths as an adult, they're not going to be very powerful in their root chakra. They're not going to feel grounded, and they're not going to feel supported, and they're not going to feel very stable and balanced by the universe and God, because they were never supported or encouraged that they are a provider and they have strengths. You know, where from my point of view, it's really important to recognize, for men and women, but specifically for men, how strong they are emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually, and what their strengths are. So what we tend to do in this society is we tend to point out the weaknesses in men.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether he went to high school or college, or he was a drug dealer, whatever it might be, we tend to focus on that. But if we can really focus in on sharing with that man his strengths, that will actually help him to get more supported and grounded, which then activates the root chakra for him to be able to focus and move forward into his life of success and feeling successful. You know, and it really all really starts, from my opinion, from the chakras itself, because when the chakras are out of alignment, it does create an out of alignment with your physical world, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where it shows up. Like, I can pretty much look at a person based on their, let's say, their education, their career, their relationships, specifically relationship and career, and know whether or not their chakras are aligned.
Okay.
Because if they're not happy with their career, their chakras are not balanced.
So
And if they're not happy
explain.
with their career,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, explain what the chakra is. If I.
Well, the chakra, spiritually speaking, is what we call an energetic wheel.
Okay.
And it's one of those things where you can't go to the doctors and say, I want an x-ray and see what my chakras look like. But you can sit in meditation quietly and allow yourself to sit and go within and get a general idea what this energy is like when you're connecting with the chakras.
Okay.
So when one can do that, it allows them to feel more grounded and centered when each of their chakras are aligned. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to run through the 7 chakras just to give them the names of the
Okay.
chakras and where they're located in the body, just so they have an understanding.
Okay.
So I was just speaking about the root chakra because I thought that was important. So the root chakra is located right in the tailbone. And then you have the sacral, which is all about the energy of creativity and being reborn and being confident. And that sits right below the belly button. And then we have the solar plexus, which is one of my favorites. It sits right in the belly, and it's our power chakra. It's where we feel powerful, we feel secure, we feel safe, and we have that sense of abundance. Then we have our heart chakra, which is where our emotions sit, where we feel happy and joyful. And that's right in the center of the heart. And then here's the real big one that many of us have a challenging time with, which is the throat chakra. How to communicate. What are we saying to ourselves? What are we hearing people say about us? What maybe inner child stuff that we've been carrying that might have not have been so nice? That sits in the throat. That's the internal dialogue. And then you have your third eye, which allows you to go in mentally and spiritually and connect on a deeper level to who you are and what you're here to do. And that's between the eyebrows. And then we have the crown. This is the one that connects you to whom you might call your higher power, who you call your higher self, your loved ones who have crossed over. And for those who do believe in spirits and angels, that's who we connect to as well. And when these chakras are in a line, everything in your life externally becomes in alignment. And understanding that it takes a daily practice to align your chakras,
Mm-hmm.
and also understand that your chakras are not going to be aligned every day.
Okay. Now, how do you get your chakras in line, or your chakras?
Good question. The simplest way, believe it or not, is sitting quietly and allowing yourself to meditate and becoming more aware of who you are on a deeper level. And meditation practice does not have to be this long, drawn out, oh my God, I got to sit quietly and breathe. No, meditation practice could be to the point where, and I'm gonna use this example, and it's gonna sound like a really funny example because we all do this. Meditation can actually be done in the bathroom. when
Yeah.
you're either taking a shower or going to the bathroom, where you can just be in that space of quietness and just allowing yourself to be in that space of going in and not being distracted by the outside noise.
Okay.
And when one can actually allow them to do that, where they spend 5 minutes or even longer in that space of just being, and like I like to say, have a conversation with your higher power, ask questions out loud, and just open your ears up to what the answers may come to you as.
Mm-hmm.
And from my point of view, that's probably the easiest way to really go into a meditation practice. And there's so many different meditation practices, some more challenging than others.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for anyone who's going to just start out and they don't think they have the time to do meditation, because most people will say, "Oh, I don't have time to sit and do a meditation."
Yeah,
Well,
that's me.
like I said before, yeah, like I said before, we all have time to go to the bathroom and we all have time to take a shower. And in those two spaces, you can turn around and meditate for 5 minutes, just being in a space where you're just with yourself, checking in, and just being quiet and allowing yourself just to be in that quiet space where we're not entertaining the noise around us. Because many people don't like to sit in quiet. And reason why many people don't like to sit in quiet is because they don't like to hear what comes up. And I know it sounds funny. Well, we're sitting in quiet. What are we hearing? Well, you're hearing the inner voice,
Right.
the things that show up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a matter of developing that, maybe again, that 5-minute practice wherever you can fit it in, so you can get into that space of aligning your chakras and just being mindful of how you is definitely a reflection of what's going on around you.
Okay.
So, for example, if someone is experiencing a lot of chaos, or they're really not happy at their job, or their relationship isn't going really well, a fine indication that they are not balanced with their body. They are
Mm-hmm.
not balanced with their mind, their spirits, nor their emotions.
Hmm.
And as long as they can go into that space of recognizing, like, well, why is this all happening? And rather than focusing on, well, my boss is an idiot and that's why I don't like my job. No, your boss is not an idiot. There's just something not aligned with you, that you're attracting this particular person in your life, and he's showing up because there's something that needs to be healed within yourself. And as we said earlier, we attract these people into our path. So if there is somebody coming into your path who you're not liking very much of,
Mm-hmm.
there's a good indication that that's something about yourself you don't like.
Mm.
And that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yes, it is. You don't never want to
Yes.
realize there's something about yourself that you don't like. Well, we do know there's things about ourselves we don't like, but when it's something in our inner core that we don't like, that's a hard pill to take, because a lot of people don't like criticism from other people, never alone their own self.
Exactly. And also too, it's really easy to sit back and say, well, that person's annoying. The way they do this is annoying. Well,
Mm-hmm.
why are they annoying you? And then when you can get to that space of why they're annoying them, then it's like, oh, well, maybe that's something you might want to look in the mirror. I always say that person that you're referring to is just a mirror image of yourself. And again, there'll be people who come into your life who's going to mirror image some great things about you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to be people who come into your life that's going to mirror some things about you that are like, whoa, is that really me? Am I really like that? I need to work on that. And just move into that space of be able to working on that.
Is there a way to identify that? To say that that is coming from me, even though they are projecting it on me, that's coming from me.
Well, that's a good question. And yes, there is a way to identify it, but in order to identify it, one has to be awakened to understand that exists. Because
Okay.
again, it just goes back to, again, coming into their own space and recognizing. I think the easiest way to answer that question is for each individual, recognize that every person that comes into their path
Mm-hmm.
are coming in to teach them something. So if there is somebody that's in their path that they're not really liking, evaluate what it is they don't like. And now, rather than seeing that person's face on them, replace the person's face with your own face,
Mm.
and then ask, how is that about me? And where does that actually sit?
Mm-hmm.
And where did that come from? And when they could take each person's face off and put their own face on that person,
Mm-hmm.
then they start to realize, like, okay, they're just a reflection of things about me that I'm not liking about myself. And these people point out, and it's not an easy thing to do, because again, now you got to realize, like, oh, there's things about myself I don't like, and people are representing it. And there's always going to be, because let's face the reality of life, we are not perfect. And
What?
no matter how much healing work we do on ourselves, what's that?
I said, what? We're not?
No, we're not perfect. No,
Oh,
no.
jeez.
And no matter how much healing, no matter how much healing work we do on ourselves, we're always going to be in the process of peeling a layer. And there's always going to be somebody else that's going to show up to show us something else. And we may actually even sit back and say, well, I thought I worked on that already. You did. But now there's a deeper layer to work on. So there's another layer. And then there'll be another layer and another layer. And there's always going to be a layer. That's why it's an ongoing process. It doesn't end. That when your spiritual journey ends is when you no longer have a pulse, which means you're being called to go home. That's when it ends. So until that point happens, there's always going to be people that show up to represent things that you need to work on for yourself. And in addition of it showing up for you to work on for yourself, it also hopefully in return helps them to work on that other person works on themselves as well. Because like I said earlier, it's a team effort.
Uh-huh.
You know, and at the same time, somebody could show up in your life who's pointing out some really negative things about you. They stay for the time being, and then all of a sudden when you learn it, all of a sudden that person's no longer in your life anymore. That's that expression I said earlier, people come into your life for season, reason, or lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And some people come in for a very short period of time. They're there to teach you something, and then they leave. And then it's up to you to learn that lesson.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and then somebody else may show up, you know, in replacement to the other person, if in fact you didn't learn the lesson. But if you learned a lesson, then there'll be different lessons to learn.
All right. And this is something that a person would have to do on its own. It's not something that like a husband and wife could come together and do, is it? Or, you know, it wouldn't be, they have to do theirs and you have to do yours, and you can talk about maybe what you've learned or what you've discovered. But would you say that this is a individual project?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely not. In
So you
fact,
can do it.
I actually believe that, well, to start off with, one of the two will start their journey first. And again, hate to say it this way, but most of the time it's the woman. And then in that conversation, she may have with her husband or her partner, you know, if they're not married, and say, look, this is what I'm doing, and I really want our relationship to grow in a much more positive way. So I would really love it if you can come on board and do this with me.
Okay.
And hopefully that person says, yeah. They work individually on their own stuff, but then they also come together and work together as well.
Okay.
So it is an individual process as much as it is a couple process. When it's two people working together, like a husband and wife, or those who are in a relationship where they're not married but living together, where they may want to do this journey together, but also recognizing that they're going to do it separately as well.
Okay.
And the most important thing is each individual has to recognize that they're only responsible for themselves. I can only change me.
Right.
As my husband can only change him. And as you can change you, your wife changes her, the two of you come together with your changes, and now your relationship changes too, because now you're both doing things very differently. And that makes, and not only does it make it stronger in reference to the relationship, but when we think about the spiritual component to it, because now you're both working from a spiritual sense versus an ego sense. And when we go into that space of the spiritual being, you're now developing what we call a spiritual relationship with one another. And when I use the word spiritual, I'm not speaking in reference to church. I'm
Right.
speaking in reference to like the two of you are literally becoming spiritual beings together
Mm-hmm.
and doing your work together and helping each other recognize like, wow, we are growing, we are shifting. You know, what we used to like before, we may not like anymore. And we're learning how to communicate with each other. So you're able to express yourself, not in an angry way, but in a more kind and peaceful way where you're actually going to listen to each other. As opposed to maybe in the past, you might have had conversations where you sort of zoned each other out and didn't really get much from the conversation because you weren't listening. But when you go into the spiritual journey together, things really do shift in reference to how you communicate, how you connect, and doing it together and doing it apart. So
Okay.
it is definitely a team effort and also an individual effort as well.
Okay.
So, I mean, I commend relationships, partners who choose to do this together and want to grow together. And
Mm-hmm.
also understanding, too, that even though they're both working together, sometimes what will happen for one is their frequency will raise so quickly where the other one sort of goes a little slower. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. That's okay. We're not, the one thing we have to learn that we don't expect the other person to transform as quickly as we do, or
Okay.
vice versa,
Okay.
you know,
Well,
because,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, Reverend Joanne, that is unfortunately our time for today. I mean,
Oh,
it really is interesting, and I really wanted to find out more because I know my wife and I both have talked about learning to meditate, and and I don't always feel like I have the time to sit and be quiet. But listening to you today is I I know I have the time and I will make the time because I think it is a great idea and I think it is good for the heart and the mind and the soul. So I want you to tell our guests how they can find out more about you and get in touch with you as well.
sure. Well, I guess the best way they can find out more about me or get in contact with me is through my email, which is healingwithin76@gmail.com. They can also go to my website, which is www.holisticwithawfitnessny.com. And I welcome emails, so feel free to send your questions, especially regarding the show. Send the questions to the email address, and I'll be more than happy to connecting with you. And also for those who do watch the show, feel free to take advantage of a free 10-minute chakra balance Reiki treatment, which will include a meditation in it. So it might be something you might want to try.
Yeah, okay. I think I definitely might just try that. And we'll see what we can do about learning to meditate a little bit better because I think I need it. I would like to do it because I need to learn how to quiet myself down. So thank you for being on our show today. And I know that we've had our audience has got a lot out of this, and this is great. So thank you again, and we'd love to have you back, again on the show to maybe talk about some more. Okay.
I would love to be here.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for today, and you have been watching the Father Show, and we've had Reverend Joanne on, and so she talked about the meditation, and I think it's a great idea, and I would love to learn how to do more meditation myself. So for the fellas out there, I know there's a lot of fellas that do it. I've even had some friends that tell me about it. So I know that some of you out there that does it. But don't forget, if you like the show, please subscribe to it and hit that bell so that every week when we put a new show out, you'll be notified. And if you know somebody that needs this video, please share it with them. And don't forget, leave some comments on the bottom. We always welcome anybody's comment. We want to hear what you have to say. And we want to know if there's a show that or a subject matter that you would like for us to do. Please let us know. Just drop it down there in the comment. And if you're looking for additional resources, please go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com and you can find resources there. And we have a list. That list is growing every day. And that list is also including we're working on getting all 50 states. We started a new website, so we're rebuilding it. But we have it in all 50 websites. So we have what you need. Go find it, get it, and please, make sure you are being the best father, the best man that you can be. That is our goal, and that's what we want for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being on, tuning in this week. We love to see you again next week. Until that time, God bless.